The abortion debate in Canada has exploded onto both the front pages of newspapers, but also the editorial pages. Last week on the briefing, we talked about the undercover video investigation done by pro-life activist Alissa Golob. She went undercover in 4 abortion clinics across Canada to prove that you could essentially get a late-term abortion on a viable, healthy baby, no questions asked. Her health didn't have to be in danger. The baby could be just fine, again, healthy and viable, and you could still get an abortion. And if you couldn't get it at the clinic that you requested it, they would refer you to somebody who would do it. And it took a couple of days because what abortion activists do in this country is they kind of ignore something until they realize they can't ignore it anymore. And now the debate has exploded both across social media and a massive front page story in the National Post, which came out on Saturday. It's a great story because it truly exposes what's going on in this country in a way that makes the issue impossible to ignore. And again, I believe that this is an invitation to conservative politicians to actually take action on an issue that social conservatives deeply care about and that they should care about as well, that the majority of Canadians would support. So I want to read a couple of segments here from the National Post story because we've got a national newspaper here directly rebutting the claims of abortion activists. And I love the way it opened. New videos from anti-abortion activists have sparked a debate on the guardrails in a country without any abortion legislation at all. That's a fact, again, that abortion activists want to hide. As we discussed in the previous episode of the briefing, when We Need a Law put up a billboard that just said Canada has no abortion laws, the Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada appealed to the CRTC to have that taken down. They do not want that fact discussed. In 2013, former longtime Liberal MP Dr. Carolyn Bennett, in a terse letter to the National Post, said no doctor in Canada can terminate a pregnancy after 24 weeks unless the mother's life is at risk or the fetus has serious complications. That was a lie then. It is a lie now. But Alissa Golob actually has footage now of abortionists that make it indisputable that this is not the case. The assertion that late-term abortions can be performed for any reason or no reason at all is just not true, wrote Bennett, who challenged a columnist to find a single late-term abortion performed in Canada to a healthy mother with a healthy fetus. The pro-life movement has provided examples of this in the past. Now we have RightNow's undercover investigation. In fact, the National Post says there need not be a medical reason for later gestational age abortion in Canada, according to Abortion Care Canada, formerly the National Abortion Federation of Canada. There does not have to be a specific medical concern that is named to get an abortion beyond the first trimester, said Executive Director T.K. Pritchard. So Pritchard was basically responding to Alissa Golob's videos. And what's interesting is the National Post summarizes Alyssa's findings, which we went through in the previous video, that basically has abortion providers telling her it doesn't matter if she's healthy, if the baby's healthy, if there's no health risks to her, she can get an abortion if she wants to. And in the article, you have all these abortion activists basically saying, well, the videos are deceptively edited. Well, this is demonizing late-term abortion. Well, the term late-term abortion really isn't an accurate term. But then basically admitting that everything the videos say is true. Once you get through all of their bluster, so pro-abortion groups, according to the National Post, said the videos are an attempt to create a demonized view of abortion. And Frederic Chabot, Executive Director of Action Canada for Sexual Health and Rights, said, these videos are a good example of something that is heavily edited, deceptive, heavily narrated, and they're basically built to elicit an emotional response from the public to support an effort to restrict abortion and gain support to make that happen. They are presenting bits of the conversation. We don't know that they have been what has been presented to those healthcare providers. But if we scroll down a little bit, what does Chabot actually conclude? In Canada, we have nothing that criminalizes abortion care at any point in pregnancy. There is no criminal law that says at this random time, this is when abortion will not be provided. So they're deceptively edited. We don't know what was actually said to the healthcare providers. These videos are deceitful and demonizing, but yeah, pretty much. They're correct. It's true. So they're not even really arguing. They're objecting to the fact that attention is being drawn to Canada's horrific late-term abortion regime where healthy, viable babies can be aborted in the womb for any reason or for no reason at all. And she says there's no criminal law that says at this random time, this is when abortion will not be provided. Of course, that's not what the law would say, but it also wouldn't be a random time, would it, Chabot? It would be, well, the baby's viable at this point. The baby feels pain at this point. I'm a pro-lifer, so I think that a baby in the womb should be protected just because he or she is a baby. But there's no law that says at this random time it will be restricted. That's obviously a straw man, and I could understand why she's on the ground thrashing around with this straw man, because she just affirmed the basic conclusion of the Undercover videos that Alissa released. So you basically have the half of the article that elicits comments from abortion activists just affirming what Alissa's poll said. And the reason that they're trying to claim these videos are dangerous or deceptive or demonizing is because of what it says towards the end of the article. With no legal boundaries on abortion in Canada, there are also no legal restrictions on gestational age limits. How far along in the pregnancy is too far? Legally, a woman could have an abortion at any stage of pregnancy. A Ledger poll in May 2024 found a majority of Canadians or somewhat support a woman's right to abortion if she chooses. However, abortions late in pregnancy can be particularly ethically and morally challenging. That is something abortion activists deny entirely. They do not think that it's ethically and morally challenging, but the majority of Canadians do in fact think so. So one study, I want to skim to this next poll here. About a 2020 DART and Mara Blue poll conducted for the National Post found 7 in 10 Canadians say abortion should be generally illegal in the last 3 months of pregnancy from 28 weeks on. That is why they don't want the discussion to happen. 70% of Canadians are horrified by the sort of thing that Alissa uncovered. And what's interesting to see is that online you have two tacks taken. So the abortion undercover investigation here has been trending multiple times on Canadian X. And you have all these abortion activists, these doctors, and even a bunch of Liberal MPs now, like Dr. Doug Ayolfson. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Anyways, he is a former Emerge doctor and Liberal MP. And he responded to Dr. Leslyn Lewis's tweet of the National Post front page by saying, late-term abortion is a false flag. The only abortions are performed late in pregnancy are in emergency situations like septic pregnancy, where the fetus is not viable and the mother and the fetus would die if the procedure was not performed. The NP article is misinformation. This is a Liberal MP accusing abortion activists and abortion doctors of spreading misinformation about abortion. It's crazy because they're asserting that this thing isn't happening. Now, surely, however, there's some common ground here, because my proposal would be, well, then surely you would support a bill to make the thing you say isn't happening illegal. If it's not happening anyways, then there should be no objection to making it illegal in the first place. Now, not a single one of these Liberal MPs, maybe I'm being uncharitable, maybe some of them would, but I suspect that not a single one of these Liberal MPs would vote for a bill that restricted abortion, say at viability, say at 21 weeks, or say 22 weeks when a Canadian hospital will actually intervene to keep a baby alive outside the womb. Would they support a bill that said healthy babies cannot be aborted after viability? Of course they wouldn't, but they're saying it's not happening. They're lying. They're lying about that. And they know, that's why they sound so desperate, and that's why they sound so angry. So Doug Ayolfson, this MP here, as soon as RightNow started responding to him, he just started blocking them on X. And so what you're seeing is this narrative fall apart. And the narrative was always garbage, because the narrative was, we can't talk about the fact that abortion is legal till birth in Canada. And that's because Canadians are pretty horrified when they find out about this. Almost 80% of Canadians are not aware of this fact, which means that even when We Need a Law just puts up the statement, Canada has no abortion laws, a statement of fact, the Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada will call for that to be pulled down. And then when Alissa Golob does an undercover video investigation, the abortion activists say this is deceptively edited, it's demonizing, we have no idea what the conversations actually said, but yeah, there's no legal limit in Canada. Yeah, you can get an abortion late term. Some of them were even saying there's no such thing as a late term abortion. Well, the Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada actually has a document where they define what a late-term abortion is. So the Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada, position paper number 22, late-term abortion defined as after 20 weeks. This paper describes the incidence of late-term abortions, which we define here as abortions after 20 weeks. That's the Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada. These people are so desperate they can't even get their story straight. Late-term abortions are a false flag. They don't happen. Well, the Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada says they don't happen. Well, I guess they're wrong too. Well, these videos are deceptively edited because they tell you that you can get an abortion at any point. But yes, in fact, you can get an abortion at any point. So I would love for them to actually decide what their position is so that we could debate them. But at the end of the day, it's really hard to make a cogent argument when you're standing on top of a giant pile of shifting baby corpses, because that's what they're doing. They're talking about aborting babies that are healthy and viable, and they'll use whatever argument they need to do to shut the argument down, even when 5 abortion activists and MPs online are making a different argument at the same time to respond to a video investigation that they admit to the National Post is basically right in all the essential claims that it makes. That's where we are. It kind of gives you an idea of what an open door conservative MPs could be pushing at if they decided to actually take an investigation like this and say, why is it that Canada is the only country in the Western world with no abortion limits? And that brings me to the editorial on the National Post's back page. It was an unsigned editorial, meaning that it reflects the view of the newspaper. And so they have the front page, they had a double wide inside the newspaper describing this. That's where the quotes that I just read to you come from. Then they had an editorial, and their editorial reads as follows. A serious country should be able to have a national debate and come up with a solution that both respects a woman's right to choose what she does with her own body and the rights of the person growing inside her. The person growing inside her is quite a deliberate choice of words there. Unfortunately, Canada is a place where progressives have decided that some topics are too dangerous even to discuss, and so Canada is perpetually stuck with a suboptimal status quo. Yeah, I think viable babies being killed in the womb is suboptimal. That's the understatement of the decade, but I at least appreciate the point that they're trying to make here. And then they close their editorial here by citing again, 70% of Canadians support the idea of outlawing abortion in the last 3 months of pregnancy. It would appear as though the majority of the electorate would be in favor of reasonable limits placed on the practice. We can only hope that they will stop being intimidated by the Liberals' fear campaign and start making their voices heard, which reads to me kind of like a rebuke of a lot of conservative MPs, with some very notable exceptions, including Leslyn Lewis, who has been outdoing herself both on Facebook and on X, engaging in the debate, very, very clearly stating what the problem is. But just, I want to give you one other example of disinformation, because it shows the extent to which abortion activists not only do they not have their facts right, they don't even know what they don't know. So one doctor here posted at the front page of the Toronto Star for when the RV Morgentaler decision was, when the RV Morgentaler decision eliminated all of Canada's abortion laws in 1988 and then returned the issue to Parliament. And this doctor tweets, "We shouldn't take for granted the 1988 Supreme Court of Canada ruling that abortion should be removed from the Criminal Code of Canada. With the wrong government in power, this can be lost." Do you promise? "Look no further than the United States. Canada must be vigilant." And he misspells vigilant wrong. But here's the crazy thing. On the front page of the Toronto Star, right? So there's the headline is "Court Strikes Down Abortion Law." He didn't even read that sub-headline, which is in slightly smaller letters above it, which says MPs must decide whether laws needed to guard the unborn. So even when it's a giant picture that he's putting on X and tweeting out, he can't even be bothered to read the headline, which would have corrected his very ignorant post, which is the Supreme Court of Canada did not say there should be no laws on abortion. It said that it was up to Parliament to redraft legislation after eliminating the system that had existed since 1969. And in fact, Justice Bertha Wilson, who was the only female on the court at the time, thought that might be at some point in the second trimester. Not even Henry Morgentaler would do abortions after that. And so abortion activists are the primary purveyors of disinformation, which is why a video comes out and they're like deceptive, disinformation, demonizing, but like pretty much right when you get down to it. So that's the state of Canada's abortion debate. Congratulations to RightNow for blowing this onto the front pages, forcing abortion activists to expose their ignorance all over the place, forcing abortion activists to admit that they are right in the pages of a national newspaper after abortion activists tried to pull facts like that off of billboards for fear Canadians might wake up and realizing what their taxpayer dollars are funding. And if politicians can't look at this debate and realize we've got an open door here, the abortion activists not only don't know what they're saying, they can't even get their story right amongst themselves, then I don't know what to tell you. They're not going to get a better opportunity than this. Thank you so much for listening to or watching the Bridgehead this week. We hope you did find it helpful. Please do share around if you did find it helpful. Like the video, subscribe. You can get our content across any podcast platform, that you use. Thanks again.